Can you leave the house for an hour or so? I need some privacy with him, Elara said, talking about her male best friend Rhett. Her voice carried that casual tone she used when asking me to pick up milk or take out the trash. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing construction estimates for the Henderson project. 22 years of marriage, and she drops this request like it's nothing. The audacity was almost impressive. Sure, I replied, closing the laptop slowly. Take everything that belongs to you, and leave. Forever. Her face went blank for a moment, like her brain needed time to process what I'd just said. Then came that nervous laugh she always used when she thought I was joking. Hale, what are you talking about? I stood up from the kitchen table and walked to our bedroom. The closet door opened with its familiar squeak. I pulled out her matching burgundy suitcases, the ones we'd bought for our honeymoon in Niagara Falls, back when she still pretended to love me. I'm talking about giving you exactly what you want, I said, dropping the suitcases on our bed. Privacy. All the privacy you could ever need. Elara followed me, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. You're being ridiculous. Rhett is my friend. We're just working on the charity event planning. Right. The charity event that requires privacy in our bedroom. I opened the dresser and started pulling out her clothes. Funny how charity work has changed since I was young. Stop it, Hale. You're embarrassing yourself. I turned to face her. Elara stood in the doorway, arms crossed, still beautiful at 41, but with something cold behind her green eyes that hadn't been there when we first met. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless even at 8 in the evening. She looked like she was ready for a date, which, I supposed, she was. Embarrassing myself? I continued folding her blouses into the suitcase. That's interesting coming from someone who just asked her husband to leave so she could entertain another man in his own house. It's not like that. Then explain what it's like, Elara. Use small words so my blue-collar brain can understand. She huffed and pulled out her phone. Rhett, there's been a change of plans. Can we meet at your place instead? I listened to her side of the conversation while I packed her jewelry box. Rhett's voice was loud enough that I caught fragments, something about his roommate being home and needing our place to be comfortable. When she hung up, I was already in the bathroom, gathering her expensive skincare products. Fine, she said. We'll go to his place. But this conversation isn't over. You're absolutely right, I said, dropping her moisturizer into a makeup bag. It's not a conversation at all. It's an eviction. While Elara finished packing, I walked to the home office and opened the filing cabinet. The house deed was in the folder labeled Property, my name only, purchased 3 years before we married with money I'd saved from my construction business. I photographed the title with my phone along with the utility bills that showed the same single name. Next, I opened my laptop and changed the Wi-Fi password from Elara Hale 2023 to Privacy for Rhett. I logged into our cellular account and removed her line from the family plan. The shared banking app was next. I logged out of her profile and changed the password. 20 minutes later, Elara dragged her suitcases to the front door. Rhett waited in his silver BMW, engine running. He was handsome in that gym instructor way, all white teeth and fake tan. The kind of guy who called everyone buddy and took selfies at the grocery store. This is insane, Hale. I'll be back tomorrow when you've calmed down. No, I said, holding the door open for her. You won't. She left with her friend, and I watched them drive away, Elara's laughter floating through the BMW's open windows. I didn't follow them. Instead, I packed my own laptop, my documents, and enough clothes for a few days. I locked the door, got in my Ford pickup, and drove to the Hampton Inn on Route 9. From the hotel lobby, I emailed Elara the move-out notice I'd drafted months ago when I first suspected her affair. I also sent her the account separation confirmation and a copy of the house deed. The emails were professional, cold, and legally airtight. A few hours later, my phone rang. Elara's name appeared on the screen. "Hale, where are you? Why aren't the cards working? I can't get into the house." "Don't call me," I said, settling back in the hotel room chair. "I need some privacy, too. Privacy with your best friend. Maybe Rhett can help you figure things out now." I hung up and turned off the phone. That night, I forwarded copies of the separation notice to her parents and her sister. I also sent them screenshots of the text messages I'd found on her iPad. The one she'd forgotten was synced to our shared iCloud account. The messages painted a clear picture of a woman who'd been planning this affair for months, discussing her boring husband and ending marriage with her lover. In the morning, I drove to Kowalski's Lock and Key and had the house locks changed. Then, I visited my lawyer's office and filed the divorce papers I'd prepared weeks ago. The joint lease addendum for Elara's car was canceled next, another document that required only my signature since I was the primary leaseholder. When Elara returned to our house that afternoon, her key didn't work. Everything she owned was already gone, packed in those burgundy suitcases. So was I. But I wasn't far. I was parked across the street, watching through my truck's windshield as she stood on the porch, trying her key again and again, her face growing redder with each failed attempt. She called Rhett, she called her sister, she called her parents, she even called the police, but they explained that since my name was on the deed and I'd provided legal notice, there was nothing they could do. Finally, she called me. I let it ring. Cedar Hollow wasn't the kind of place where secrets stayed buried long. Mrs. Crane, our 72-year-old neighbor, had the surveillance instincts of the CIA and the discretion of a megaphone. By the time I returned to the house the next evening, she was already watering her petunias with suspicious enthusiasm. "Evening, Hale," she called from her porch. "Saw some excitement yesterday. Everything all right?" "Everything's perfect, Mrs. Crane. Just some spring cleaning." She nodded knowingly. Mrs. Crane had been married to 3 different men and buried 2 of them. She understood the mechanics of relationship warfare better than most generals understood actual warfare. "That's good, dear. Sometimes we need to clean out things that have gone bad before they spoil everything else." I unlocked my front door, my new locks worked smoothly, and stepped into a house that felt different, bigger somehow, quieter. The absence of Elara's constant phone conversations and reality TV shows created a peace I hadn't realized I'd been missing. My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter, Sophie. "Dad, what the hell? Mom is staying at Aunt Linda's and crying. She says you kicked her out for no reason." I typed back, "Ask your mother about her privacy needs with Rhett. Then ask her about the text messages." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before Sophie responded. "What text messages?" I forwarded her a screenshot. Nothing explicit, just enough to show the timeline and the planning involved. Sophie was 18 and smart enough to read between the lines. The dots appeared and disappeared for a full minute before she wrote, "Oh." Then, "I'm staying at Mom's tonight." "That's fine," I replied. "But remember who paid for your car, your phone, and your college fund?" No response. I made myself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. The construction business had been good to me over the years. Trenwick Construction wasn't the biggest outfit in Cedar Hollow, but we were reliable, honest, and reasonably priced. I'd built a reputation on showing up when I said I would and finishing what I started. The irony wasn't lost on me that my wife had apparently decided I was the opposite, unreliable, dishonest, and someone who couldn't finish what he started. My email inbox contained 17 messages from Elara, each one more desperate than the last. The subject lines told the story. "We need to talk" had evolved into "This is insane," and finally, "You can't do this to me." I could, actually. And I had. But reading her messages, I realized Elara still didn't understand the fundamental shift that had occurred. She thought this was a tantrum, a temporary reaction that would blow over once I came to my senses. She was planning to wait me out, let me cool down, then return to the status quo. She was wrong. My phone rang. Linda, Elara's sister. Hale, this is ridiculous. Elara made a mistake, but you're being cruel. Linda, did Elara show you the text messages? What text messages? The ones where she calls me a pathetic loser and discusses how much better Rhett is in bed. Those text messages. Silence. She's been planning this affair for months, I continued. She's been lying to you, to her parents, to everyone. The only mistake she made was getting caught. Marriage is about forgiveness, Hale. You're right, and I forgive her. I forgive her so completely that I'm setting her free to be with the man she really wants. No more sneaking around, no more lies, just pure freedom. I hung up. The next morning I drove to Mick's boxing gym on the south side of town. The building was a converted warehouse with concrete floors, exposed pipes, and the permanent smell of sweat and determination. Mick Kowalski, no relation to the locksmith, was a former Golden Gloves champion who'd opened the gym after a career-ending injury in the 80s. Well, well, Mick said as I walked in. Look what the cat dragged in. Haven't seen you in months. Been busy with married life, I said, pulling on my workout gloves. Turns out I had some free time open up. Mick was 63 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had the emotional sensitivity of a sledgehammer. He also had an uncanny ability to read people's situations without needing explanation. Uh-huh, free time, that's what we're calling it. He pointed to the heavy bag. Work it out, then we'll talk. I spent an hour hitting the bag, working through combinations Mick had taught me years ago. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The rhythm was meditative, each impact sending vibrations up my arms and into my shoulders. By the time I finished, my shirt was soaked and my knuckles were sore. Feel better? Mick asked, handing me a towel. Some. Good. Now let me tell you something about fighting, Hale. The guy who wins isn't always the strongest or the fastest. It's the guy who thinks 3 moves ahead while the other guy is still reacting to the last punch. I wiped sweat from my face. Meaning? Meaning whatever happened, whatever she did, don't just react. Plan. Think it through. Make your moves count. I nodded and headed for the showers. Mick's advice was sound, but he didn't know I'd already been thinking 3 moves ahead. I'd been planning this response for weeks, ever since I'd found the first suspicious text message. The shower water was cold, which suited my mood perfectly. Through the thin walls, I could hear the rhythmic pounding of someone working the speed bag. The sound reminded me of a heartbeat, steady and relentless. When I got home, Mrs. Crane was in her garden again, but this time she wasn't alone. Rhett's BMW was parked in front of my house, and he was standing on my porch with Elara, gesturing animatedly at the front door. I parked in my driveway and walked over. Can I help you folks? Rhett turned around. Up close, he was even more ridiculous than I'd thought. His hair was perfectly styled with enough product to waterproof a deck. His tank top showed off arms that were clearly the result of more time than talent, and his cologne was strong enough to violate environmental protection laws. Hale, buddy, we need to talk, he said, flashing those white teeth. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. I agree, I said. You're on my property without permission. That's called trespassing. Elara stepped forward. Hale, please. Can we just discuss this like adults? Adults don't ask their spouses to leave so they can entertain lovers, I replied. Adults get divorced first. It's not what you think, Rhett said. Elara and I are just friends. We're working on a charity project together. I looked at him for a long moment. Rhett, right? That's right, buddy. Tell me about this charity project. He launched into an elaborate explanation about organizing a fundraiser for local veterans. The details were surprisingly specific: venue, date, guest list, auction items. Either he was an excellent liar, or there actually was a charity event. That sounds wonderful, I said when he finished. I'd love to make a donation. Elara's face brightened. Really? Absolutely. I'll donate my wife's participation. Permanently. Rhett's smile faltered. Look, buddy, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is you calling me buddy. We're not buddies. We're not friends. And if you don't get off my property in the next 30 seconds, we're going to find out what we really are. He looked at Elara, who was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. This wasn't the Hale she knew, the accommodating husband who avoided confrontation and kept his opinions to himself. Come on, Elara, Rhett said. We'll figure this out later. They walked back to his car, but Elara turned around before getting in. This isn't over, Hale. You're right, I called back. It's just getting started. Mrs. Crane had stopped pretending to garden and was openly watching the show. When Rhett's BMW disappeared around the corner, she walked over to the fence that separated our properties. That boy's got more muscles than sense, she said. Most of them do. And your wife? I considered the question. My wife made her choice. Now she gets to live with it. Mrs. Crane nodded approvingly. About time someone in this neighborhood grew a backbone. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer and my laptop, watching the sun set over Cedar Hollow. The town had seen better days. The main street was half empty. The old textile mill had been closed for a decade, and most of the young people left for bigger cities after high school. But it was still home, and unlike my marriage, it was worth fighting for. My phone buzzed with another text from Sophie. Dad, can we talk? I called her back. Hi, Dad. Her voice was small, uncertain. Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing? Confused mostly. Mom says you've lost your mind, but those text messages... What about them? They're pretty bad, Dad. She called you names I didn't even know she knew. I waited, letting her process. Is it true about Rhett? Are they really... What do you think? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. I think my family just exploded. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Sophie. That's not fair to you. Are you going to try to work it out? The question hung in the air between us. It was the same question everyone would ask. Her parents, Linda, our friends, probably half the town. The assumption that marriage problems were temporary setbacks, obstacles to be overcome rather than fundamental incompatibilities to be acknowledged. No, I said finally. I'm not. Why not? Because your mother didn't make a mistake, Sophie. She made a choice, a series of choices over months that showed me exactly how little respect she has for me, for our marriage, and for our family. I can forgive a mistake. I can't build a life with someone who thinks I'm a joke. Sophie sniffled on the other end of the line. So what happens now? Now, we figure out how to move forward. You're 18, legally an adult. You can choose where you want to live, who you want to spend time with. I hope you'll still want to spend time with your old man, but I'll understand if this gets complicated. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started typing. If Elara wanted to play games, I'd give her a game. But it would be played by my rules, on my timeline, with stakes she hadn't even considered yet. The first move was already complete. She was out of the house, out of the accounts, and out of my daily life. The second move would be more subtle, more strategic. I opened a new browser window and started researching private investigators. The private investigator I hired was named Janet Morrison, a former police detective who'd started her own agency after retiring from the Cedar Hollow Police Department. Her office was above the hardware store on Main Street, a cramped space filled with filing cabinets and the lingering smell of coffee that had been brewing too long. I've been doing this for 12 years, Janet said, reviewing the retainer agreement. Mostly insurance fraud and workers' compensation cases. Matrimonial work is maybe 20% of my business. But you can handle it? Mr. Trenwick, your wife is having an affair with a local gym owner. She's not a criminal mastermind. Yes, I can handle it. I handed her the folder I'd prepared, copies of the text messages, bank statements showing unusual charges, and a timeline of Elara's behavioral changes over the past 6 months. "You've been thorough," Janet said, flipping through the documents. "I'm a contractor. I document everything." Smart. Most people come in here with nothing but suspicions and hurt feelings. This gives me a solid foundation to work from. Janet explained her process: surveillance, financial investigation, social media monitoring. The goal wasn't just to prove the affair, which the text messages had already accomplished, but to build a complete picture of Elara's activities and relationships. "What exactly are you hoping to achieve?" she asked. "I want to know everything: who she's been talking to, where she's been spending money, what she's been planning. I want to understand the full scope of her deception. And then I want to make sure everyone else understands it too." Janet raised an eyebrow. "Be careful, Mr. Trenwick. Revenge has a way of backfiring. This isn't revenge, it's accountability." I left Janet's office and drove across town to Henderson Construction, where I was scheduled to review the final plans for a residential addition. Tom Henderson was a good client: prompt payment, reasonable expectations, and the kind of steady work that kept my business profitable. "Hale, good to see you," Tom said, spreading the blueprints across his desk. "I heard about your situation. I'm sorry." Word traveled fast in Cedar Hollow. "Thanks. I'm managing. If you need anything, time off, flexible scheduling, just let me know. Actually, I could use more work. Keeping busy helps." Tom nodded. "I might have something. The Riverside development is looking for subcontractors. It's a big project, good money, but the timeline is aggressive. I'm interested." We spent an hour reviewing the Henderson addition plans. Then Tom walked me through the Riverside opportunity. It was indeed a big project: 43 custom homes in a new subdivision outside town. The kind of work that could keep my crew busy for 2 years. "The developer is Mark Castellano out of Albany," Tom explained. "He's got a reputation for demanding quality work, but paying well for it." "Interested?" "Very. Can you make an introduction?" "I'll call him this afternoon." Driving back through town, I passed Rhett's gym. Through the large front windows, I could see him training a client on the weight machines. He was animated, enthusiastic, playing the role of motivational fitness expert. I wondered if Elara was paying for personal training sessions, or if those were complimentary services. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Sophie's number. "Hi, Dad. Are you free for lunch tomorrow?" "Of course. Where do you want to meet?" "How about Murphy's Diner, neutral territory?" Murphy's was the kind of place where the coffee was strong, the portions were large, and the waitresses had been working there since the Carter administration. It was also public enough that our conversation would remain civil. "Sounds perfect. Noon? See you then." That evening I received an email from my lawyer confirming that Elara had been served with the divorce papers. Her response was due within 30 days, but based on the 17 voicemails she'd left on my phone, I suspected she wasn't planning to make the process easy. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Whatever she had to say could wait until she said it through her attorney. Instead, I spent the evening organizing my home office. Without Elara's belongings cluttering the space, I could finally set up a proper workspace. I installed a larger monitor for my computer, organized my project files, and created a dedicated area for business planning. The house felt different now. Not just quieter, but more purposeful. Every object had a function. Every space had a purpose. It was like living in a well-organized tool shed instead of a chaotic storage unit. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Rhett. We should talk." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "No, we shouldn't. I think there's been a misunderstanding about Elara and me. The only misunderstanding is you thinking I care about your opinion. Look, I get that you're upset, but taking it out on Elara isn't fair. She's a good person who made a mistake." I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen for another beer. When I returned, there were 3 more messages from Rhett, each one more insistent than the last. He wanted to meet, to explain, to clear the air between us. I blocked his number. The next morning, I met Sophie at Murphy's diner. She was already seated in a corner booth when I arrived, stirring sugar into her coffee with the focused intensity of someone who was nervous about the conversation ahead. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, sweetheart." I slid into the booth across from her. "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping well. This whole situation is complicated?" That's one word for it. Marge, the diner's senior waitress, appeared with a coffee pot and a smile that had been welcoming customers for 30 years. "The usual, Hale? 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, bacon?" "That sounds perfect, Marge. Thanks." Sophie ordered a salad, which told me she was more nervous than hungry. We sat in silence until Marge brought our food. Then Sophie finally spoke. "Mom wants me to talk to you." "About what?" "About giving her another chance, about counseling, about not throwing away 22 years of marriage over one mistake." I took a bite of bacon and considered my response. "What do you want to talk about?" "I want to understand what's really happening. Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're not thinking clearly. But those text messages, what about them? They don't sound like someone who made one mistake. They sound like someone who's been planning this for a long time." Sophie was smart. Smarter than either of her parents had been at 18. She'd inherited Elara's analytical mind and my practical nature, a combination that served her well in most situations. "You're right," I said. "This wasn't a mistake. It was a campaign." "So what happens now? Do you hate her?" "No, I don't hate her. Hate requires more energy than she's worth. I'm just done pretending that our marriage was something it wasn't." Sophie pushed lettuce around her plate. "She's staying with Aunt Linda, but Linda's getting tired of the drama. Mom doesn't have anywhere else to go. She has Rhett. His apartment is tiny, and his roommate doesn't want a woman moving in." I shrugged. "Those sound like problems she should have considered before she decided she needed privacy with her best friend." "Dad, come on. She's still my mother. And she always will be, but she's not my wife anymore. Those are separate relationships, Sophie. What happens between your mother and me doesn't change what happens between you and her." We finished lunch mostly in silence. Sophie was processing, trying to reconcile the mother she'd known with the woman revealed in those text messages. It wasn't an easy adjustment. As we prepared to leave, she asked, "Are you going to be okay?" "I'm going to be better than okay," I said. "I'm going to be free." That afternoon, Janet Morrison called with her first report. "Your wife and Mr. Bishop have been spending a lot of time together," she said. "Not just at the gym. They've been to restaurants, movies, even a weekend trip to Lake George last month." "While she was supposedly at her sister's house." "That's right. I've got photos, credit card records, hotel receipts. This affair has been going on for at least 4 months, probably longer." "What about the charity event they mentioned?" "There is a veterans fundraiser planned for next month. Elara is on the organizing committee. But based on my surveillance, they're spending more time in hotel rooms than planning events." I thanked Janet and hung up. The confirmation wasn't surprising, but having documentation would be useful when the divorce proceedings began in earnest. My phone rang almost immediately. Tom Henderson. "Good news, Hale. Mark Castellano wants to meet with you. Can you be in Albany tomorrow morning?" "Absolutely. 10 o'clock at his office. I'll email you the address. And Hale, this could be a game changer for your business." After hanging up, I realized I was smiling for the first time in weeks. Not because of Elara's situation, but because of my own. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on what I wanted rather than what would keep peace in my marriage. It was a liberating feeling. That evening, I drove past Rhett's gym again. The lights were on, but the parking lot was mostly empty. Through the windows, I could see him cleaning equipment, preparing to close for the night. I wondered if he was expecting Elara to stop by. I wondered if she was planning another evening of charity work. Then I realized I didn't care. I drove home, poured myself a beer, and sat on my porch watching the sunset. Mrs. Crane was in her garden as usual, but tonight she waved. "Beautiful evening," she called. "Yes, it is," I replied, and for the first time in months, I meant it. Mark Castellano's office occupied the top floor of a glass building in downtown Albany, with views of the Hudson River and the kind of expensive furniture that made you conscious of your shoes. His secretary offered coffee in actual china cups, not the disposable ones I was used to at construction sites. Castellano himself was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the confident bearing of someone who'd built his success from scratch. His handshake was firm, his eye contact direct. "Tom Henderson speaks very highly of your work," he said, gesturing for me to sit at a conference table covered with architectural drawings. "Tell me about your operation." I spent 20 minutes explaining Trenwick Construction, our history, our capabilities, our approach to quality and scheduling. Castellano listened carefully, occasionally asking specific questions about materials sourcing, labor management, and project timelines. "The Riverside development is my largest project to date," he said when I finished. 43 custom homes, price points ranging from $400,000 to $800,000. I need subcontractors who can deliver quality work on aggressive schedules. He spread out the master plan for the development. It was impressive. Curved streets following the natural topography, preserved green spaces, homes designed to complement rather than dominate the landscape. "What's your capacity?" he asked. "With my current crew, I can handle 3 houses simultaneously. With additional hiring, maybe 5. I'd want you to start with 2 houses. Prove you can deliver on time and on budget. If that goes well, we'll discuss expanding your role." We spent another hour reviewing specific plans, discussing materials and timelines. The work was exactly what I'd been hoping for: challenging but manageable, profitable but not unrealistic. "I'll be honest with you, Mr. Trenwick," Castellano said as we wrapped up. "I've had contractors promise me the world and deliver disappointment. I'm looking for someone who underpromises and overdelivers." "That's exactly what I do." "Good. I'll have contracts prepared for the first 2 houses. We'll start with those and see how it goes." Driving back to Cedar Hollow, I felt better than I had in months. The Riverside project represented not just income, but validation. My business was growing, my reputation was solid, and my future was looking brighter than it had in years. My phone rang as I reached the town limits. Janet Morrison. "I've got some interesting information," she said. "Can you stop by my office?" "On my way." Janet's office felt smaller than I remembered, perhaps because her desk was now covered with photographs, documents, and what appeared to be a timeline drawn on poster board. "Your wife has been busy," she said, pointing to the timeline. "The affair with Rhett Bishop started in January, but it's not her first." I sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" "I found evidence of at least 2 other relationships over the past 3 years, a co-worker named David Martinez and a client from her real estate days named William Chen." The names meant nothing to me, but the implications were staggering. This wasn't a recent development or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a pattern. "How did you find this?" "Social media forensics, mostly. People think they're being discreet, but digital footprints are hard to erase. Restaurant check-ins, photo locations, mutual friends' posts. It all creates a picture." Janet showed me printouts of Instagram posts, Facebook check-ins, and LinkedIn connections that painted a timeline of deception going back years. Elara had been living a double life with the efficiency of a professional spy. "There's more," Janet continued. "Your wife has been in contact with a divorce attorney for 6 weeks. She's been planning to leave you, but she wanted to establish her affair as grounds for a favorable settlement." I stared at the evidence spread across Janet's desk. She was going to divorce me? "It appears she was setting up a narrative where you were the neglectful husband who drove her into another man's arms. Classic strategy for gaining sympathy in settlement negotiations." The irony was almost funny. While I'd been planning my response to her betrayal, she'd been planning to betray me even further. What changed? I asked. You did. By kicking her out immediately, you disrupted her timeline. She wasn't ready to file yet, hadn't finished building her case. Now she's scrambling. I thanked Janet and drove home, processing this new information. The woman I'd been married to for 22 years was essentially a stranger, someone capable of years of deception, multiple affairs, and calculated manipulation. The house felt different when I walked in. Not just empty, but clean. Free of the toxic energy that had been poisoning it for years without my realizing it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Can you call me? It's important. I dialed her number. Dad, I need to tell you something, she said without preamble. I've been staying at Mom's, listening to her side of the story. Okay. She's not telling the truth. About any of it. I waited for her to continue. She told me you've been emotionally abusive for years, that you've been controlling her money and isolating her from friends. But I remember our family, Dad. That's not what happened. What do you remember? I remember you working extra jobs to pay for her real estate classes. I remember you encouraging her to go out with friends, even when you wanted her home. I remember you supporting every career change, every new interest, every crazy idea she had. Sophie's voice was getting stronger, more certain. And I remember her complaining about you to her friends, making jokes about how boring you were, how you didn't understand her needs. I thought it was just normal marriage stuff, but now you see the pattern. Yeah. And Dad, I found something else. She paused, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. I was helping her organize her things at Aunt Linda's, and I found a notebook. She's been keeping track of your business income, your assets, even your retirement accounts. She's been planning this divorce for months. The confirmation of Janet's findings hit harder coming from my daughter. Sophie had discovered her mother's deception independently, which made it impossible to dismiss as investigator bias. I'm sorry you had to learn this about your mother, I said. I'm not sorry. I'm angry. She's been lying to everyone, including me, and she's been trying to turn me against you. What do you mean? She keeps asking me to spy on you, to find out about your finances, your plans. She wants me to be her inside source. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. Elara hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd tried to weaponize our daughter against me. What did you tell her? I told her I wasn't going to be part of her games. Then I packed my stuff and left. Where are you staying? I was hoping I could come home, if that's okay with you. Relief flooded through me. Of course it's okay. This is your home, Sophie. It always will be. An hour later, Sophie arrived with 2 suitcases and a determined expression. She hugged me tightly, and I realized how much I'd missed having her around. I'm sorry I doubted you, Dad. You don't need to apologize. You were trying to be fair to both of us. That shows good character. We ordered pizza and spent the evening talking, really talking, for the first time in months. Sophie told me about her college plans, her job applications, her hopes for the future. I told her about the Riverside project, about my plans to expand the business. It felt like a family again, a smaller family, but a healthier one. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. Elara's number. I answered. Hale, we need to talk. Her voice was strained, desperate. We have nothing to discuss. Sophie left. She won't return my calls. What did you say to her? I didn't say anything. She figured it out on her own. Figured what out? That you've been lying to everyone, including her. That you've been planning this divorce for months while pretending to be the victim of my sudden breakdown. Silence on the other end. I know about David Martinez, I continued. I know about William Chen. I know about the divorce attorney you consulted 6 weeks ago. I know about the notebook where you've been tracking my assets. More silence. Hale, I can explain. No, you can't. There's no explanation that makes any of this acceptable. You've been living a lie for years, and now everyone knows it. Please, can we just meet? Can we try to work this out? Elara, listen carefully. We are done. Completely, permanently, irrevocably done. The only communication between us will be through our attorneys. I hung up and turned off the phone. The next morning, Sophie and I had breakfast together on the porch. Mrs. Crane waved from her garden and Sophie waved back. She's been watching out for you, Sophie said. Mrs. Crane watches out for everyone. It's her calling in life. No, I mean really watching out for you. She called me yesterday, told me she was worried about how you were handling everything. She said you seemed sad, but strong. I looked over at Mrs. Crane, who was pruning her roses with the focused attention of a surgeon. She'd buried 2 husbands and raised 3 children. She understood the mechanics of survival. She's a wise woman. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to be okay? Really okay? Not just pretending okay? I considered the question seriously. 3 weeks ago, I'd thought my life was falling apart. Now I realized it was actually falling into place. Yes, I said. I'm going to be better than okay. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I truly believed it. The phone call came at 6:30 in the morning, 3 days after Sophie moved back home. I was drinking coffee and reviewing the Riverside contracts when my phone rang with an unknown number. Mr. Trenwick, this is Detective Ray Kowalski with Cedar Hollow Police. I need to speak with you about an incident involving your wife. My first thought was that something had happened to Elara. My second thought was wondering why I cared. What kind of incident? Property damage. Can you come down to the station? Am I being charged with something? Just need to ask you some questions. How soon can you be here? I threw on clothes and drove to the police station, a squat brick building that had been serving Cedar Hollow since the 50s. Detective Kowalski was waiting in the lobby, a thick-set man in his 40s with tired eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen every variety of human stupidity. Thanks for coming in, he said, leading me to a small interview room. Want coffee? I'm fine. What's this about? Kowalski opened a folder and spread out photographs. They showed Rhett's BMW with 4 slashed tires, a cracked windshield, and the word cheater spray-painted across the driver's side door. This happened sometime last night in the parking lot of Rhett Bishop's gym. Your wife says you're responsible. I studied the photos. The damage was extensive, but not random. Someone had taken their time, been methodical about it. Why would she think I did this? Because you've been harassing her and Mr. Bishop since she moved out. Because you have a history of controlling behavior. Because you threatened Mr. Bishop when he came to your house last week. I leaned back in my chair. Detective, do you have any evidence that I was involved in this? Do you have an alibi for last night between midnight and 6 a.m.? I was home with my daughter. We watched a movie until about 11, then went to bed. Kowalski made a note. Your daughter will confirm this? Of course. Mr. Trenwick, I'm going to be straight with you. Your wife paints a picture of an angry, vindictive man who's been escalating his behavior since she left. She's worried about her safety. I almost laughed. Detective, has my wife mentioned why she left? She says you kicked her out without warning over a misunderstanding about a friend. A misunderstanding. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the text message screenshots. Does this look like a misunderstanding to you? Kowalski read the message, his expression shifting slightly. The text was from Elara to Rhett, describing in detail what she wanted to do to him the next time they were alone together. She didn't mention the affair, he said. I'm sure she didn't. Detective, my wife has been cheating on me for months, possibly years. When I discovered it, I ended our marriage immediately. That's not controlling behavior, that's self-respect. I showed him more screenshots, the timeline Janet had prepared, the evidence of Elara's other affairs. Kowalski reviewed everything carefully. This changes things, he said finally. I assume you'll want to verify my alibi? Already did. I called your daughter before you got here. She confirmed you were home all night. Kowalski closed the folder. Mr. Trenwick, I have to ask, do you know who might have done this to Mr. Bishop's car? No idea. But you might want to consider that my wife has been lying to multiple people for months. Maybe one of them found out. Driving home, I wondered who had vandalized Rhett's car. It wasn't me, obviously, but someone was clearly unhappy with him. The methodical nature of the damage suggested personal anger rather than random vandalism. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Mark Castellano. Hale, good news. The contracts are ready for signature. Can you come to Albany this afternoon? Absolutely. Excellent. And I've got another potential opportunity to discuss. My partner is developing a commercial project in Schenectady, retail and office space, if you're interested in expanding beyond residential work. The day was improving rapidly. I called Sophie to let her know about the police visit and the new contracts, then drove to Albany for what turned out to be the most productive business meeting of my career. Castellano's partner, Maria Santos, was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built her reputation developing urban renewal projects. The Schenectady opportunity was ambitious, a mixed-use complex that would anchor a revitalization effort in the city's downtown. We're looking for contractors who can grow with us, she explained. This project could lead to others, but we need partners who share our vision for quality development. By the time I left their office, I'd signed contracts for the Riverside houses and agreed to bid on the Schenectady project. The potential income was more than I'd made in the previous 3 years combined. I called Sophie with the news. Dad, that's amazing. We should celebrate. What did you have in mind? Dinner at Romano's, my treat. Romano's was Cedar Hollow's attempt at fine dining. White tablecloths, wine list, prices that made most locals think twice. Sophie had worked there as a hostess during high school and had always wanted to take me there as a customer. You don't have to pay for dinner, sweetheart. I want to. I've been saving money from my job, and this seems like the perfect occasion. That evening, we dressed up and drove to Romano's. The hostess, a girl Sophie had worked with, seated us at a corner table with a view of the restaurant's small garden. Sophie ordered wine. She was 18 but looked older, and I didn't object. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To family, I replied. Halfway through our appetizers, I noticed a commotion near the front of the restaurant. Elara had entered with Rhett, both of them dressed for what was clearly intended to be a romantic dinner. Rhett spotted me first and said something to Elara. She turned, saw us, and her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, and something that might have been embarrassment. Should we leave? Sophie asked quietly. Absolutely not. We were here first, and we have every right to enjoy our dinner. Elara and Rhett were seated across the restaurant, but the space was small enough that we were clearly visible to each other. I watched Elara trying to focus on her menu while stealing glances in our direction. She looks miserable, Sophie observed. She should. Her entire life just collapsed because of her own choices. Our entrees arrived, and I was surprised to realize I was actually enjoying myself. The food was excellent, the wine was good, and spending time with my daughter without the tension of family drama was refreshing. Then Elara appeared at our table. Sophie, can we talk privately? No, Sophie replied without looking up from her pasta. We're having dinner. Please, just for a minute. I watched Elara carefully. She looked older than she had a month ago, more fragile. The stress of maintaining multiple deceptions had apparently taken its toll. Mom, I don't have anything to say to you right now. I'm still your mother. Sophie finally looked up. Are you? Because mothers don't usually try to turn their children into spies against their fathers. Elara's face flushed. I never asked you to spy. You asked me to find out about Dad's finances, his plans, his business. What would you call that? Several other diners were now watching our table with obvious interest. Cedar Hollow was a small town, and public family drama was prime entertainment. "This is not the place for this conversation," I said quietly. Elara turned to me. "We need to talk, Hale. All of us as a family." "We're not a family anymore," Sophie said. "You made sure of that." Rhett appeared beside Elara, looking uncomfortable. "Maybe we should go." "Good idea," I said. They returned to their table, but the damage was done. The entire restaurant was buzzing with whispered conversations about the confrontation. Elara and Rhett finished their meal quickly and left without dessert. "Well," Sophie said, "that was awkward. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. I'm proud of myself for not backing down." We finished our dinner and drove home, where Mrs. Crane was waiting on her porch with obvious anticipation. "How was Romano's?" she asked innocently. "You already heard about the scene, didn't you?" I replied. "Margaret Romano called me 20 minutes ago. She said it was better than cable television." Sophie laughed. "Mrs. Crane, do you know everything that happens in this town?" "Dear, I've lived here for 47 years. I know things that haven't happened yet." The next morning brought another call from Detective Kowalski. "We found who vandalized Mr. Bishop's car," he said. "You're going to find this interesting." "Who was it?" "David Martinez. Turns out he's been having an affair with your wife for 2 years. He found out about Mr. Bishop and didn't take it well." The irony was perfect. Elara's current lover had been attacked by her previous lover, who was apparently unaware that he was also her previous lover. Is he being charged? Vandalism? Harassment? He'll probably get probation and restitution. But here's the thing. He says your wife told him you were abusive, that she was afraid for her safety. Same story she told us about you. Meaning she's been using the same lies to manipulate multiple men. That's how it looks. Thought you should know. After hanging up, I sat on my porch with coffee and considered the situation. Elara's web of deception was unraveling faster than she could repair it. Each lie she'd told was being exposed. Each manipulation was backfiring. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Linda, Elara's sister. We need to talk." I called the number. "Hale, thank you for calling back," Linda said. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For believing Elara's version of events. For thinking you were being unreasonable. I found out about the other men, about the planning, about all of it." "How?" "She's staying in my guest room, remember? She's been making phone calls, sending emails, trying to coordinate her story. I heard enough to realize she's been lying to everyone, including me." Linda sounded exhausted, defeated. She'd been trying to support her sister and had discovered that her sister was essentially a stranger. "What are you going to do?" "I'm asking her to leave. I can't have this drama in my house around my children. She's made her choices, and now she needs to live with them." "Where will she go?" "That's not my problem anymore. Maybe Rhett will take her in, maybe David Martinez. Maybe she'll have to figure out how to stand on her own for the first time in her adult life." That afternoon, I drove past Rhett's gym again. A "for lease" sign had appeared in the window. Either business was worse than I'd thought, or the drama was affecting his ability to operate. I wondered if Elara knew her lover was apparently going out of business. I wondered if she cared. Then I realized it didn't matter what she knew or what she cared about. Her problems were no longer my problems. For the first time in 22 years, I was completely free to focus on my own life, my own future, my own happiness. It was a remarkable feeling. The call from Elara's attorney came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing material orders for the first Riverside house. Patricia Walsh was a family law specialist from Albany with a reputation for aggressive representation and expensive billing. "Mr. Trenwick, I represent Elara Trenwick in your divorce proceedings. We need to discuss settlement terms." "That's why I have an attorney," I replied. "You can discuss terms with him. I think it would be more efficient if we could reach an understanding directly." "Ms. Walsh," The only understanding I'm interested in is that this divorce proceeds as quickly as possible with minimal drama. Everything else can be handled through proper legal channels. I hung up and immediately called my attorney, Robert Chen, a methodical man who specialized in protecting small business owners during divorce proceedings. "She's fishing," Robert said after I described the call. "Her client's position is weaker than she expected, so she's trying to negotiate directly." "What kind of position does Elara have?" "Based on the evidence you've provided? Not strong. The adultery, the deception, the attempts to manipulate the situation, none of that plays well in family court. Add in the fact that most of your assets are business-related and were accumulated through your work, and she's looking at a fairly modest settlement. What's she asking for? Spousal support, half the house value, half your retirement accounts, and a portion of business assets. Standard opening position, but unrealistic, given the circumstances. And what are you recommending? Minimal spousal support for a limited period, no claim on business assets, and a settlement that reflects her contribution to the marriage's failure." The legal process was moving forward, but I was more interested in the construction process beginning at Riverside. The first house was a 4-bedroom colonial with custom details that would showcase my crew's capabilities. I'd hired 2 additional workers, experienced carpenters who'd been laid off when another local contractor went out of business. The expanded crew meant I could take on more ambitious projects and deliver higher quality work. "This is nice," said Tommy Kowalski, my lead carpenter and Detective Kowalski's younger brother. "Real nice. Custom trim, hardwood floors, granite counters. Somebody's going to be happy living here." "That's the goal. Quality work that lasts." We spent the morning reviewing the plans and discussing the construction sequence. The foundation had been poured the previous week and was ready for framing. If everything went according to schedule, we'd have the house dried in before winter. My phone rang during lunch break. Sophie calling from her summer job at the Cedar Hollow Recreation Department. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Mom called me at work." "What did she want?" "She's being evicted from Aunt Linda's house. She wanted to know if she could stay with us temporarily." I almost choked on my sandwich. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that wasn't my decision to make, but that I didn't think it was a good idea." That was diplomatic. She started crying, Dad. Said she had nowhere else to go, that everyone had turned against her. She wanted me to feel sorry for her. "Did you?" "No. I felt sorry for the person she used to be, or the person I thought she was, but not for the person she actually is." Sophie was growing up fast, learning hard lessons about human nature and personal responsibility. It wasn't the childhood education I'd wanted for her, but it was the one she was getting. "Where is she staying now?" "I think with Rhett, but his lease is up at the end of the month. His gym is closing, so he's moving back to Syracuse where his family lives." The domino effect was accelerating. Elara's support system was collapsing as quickly as her web of lies had been exposed. "Dad, I have to ask, do you feel bad for her at all?" I considered the question while watching my crew frame the first-floor walls. These men were building something solid, something that would last, something they could be proud of. "I feel bad for the woman I thought I married," I said finally. "But that woman never existed. She was just a character Elara played when it suited her purposes." That evening, I was working on project estimates when someone knocked on my front door. Through the window, I could see Elara standing on my porch, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Hello, Elara. Can we talk, please? We have nothing to discuss." "Hale, I'm desperate. I have nowhere to go. Rhett is moving away. Linda kicked me out. My parents won't return my calls. I need help." "You need help from someone who cares about your welfare. That's not me anymore." "I know I made mistakes." "You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices over a period of years. Now you're living with the consequences." She started crying, but the tears felt manipulative rather than genuine. I'd seen her use tears as a weapon too many times to be affected by them now. I'm sorry, Hale. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Can't we try to work things out? Elara, listen carefully. I don't love you anymore. I don't trust you anymore. I don't even like you anymore. There is nothing to work out. What about Sophie? What about our family? Sophie is 18 years old and capable of maintaining her own relationship with you. As for our family, you destroyed that when you decided I wasn't worth your loyalty. I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. Please, I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just don't throw away 22 years. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally picking up the pieces of what you threw away years ago. This time I did close the door, and I locked it. Elara stood on the porch for several minutes, crying and occasionally knocking, but I didn't respond. Eventually, she left. Mrs. Crane appeared at my kitchen window 20 minutes later, holding a plate of cookies. Thought you might need these, she said, when I opened the back door. Thanks. I assume you witnessed the drama. Hard to miss. She's quite the performer. We sat on my back porch eating cookies and watching the sunset. Mrs. Crane had the comfortable presence of someone who'd survived enough of life's storms to recognize when others were weathering their own. You did the right thing, she said. It doesn't feel good. The right thing rarely does at first, but you'll sleep better tonight than she will. She was correct. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, while Elara apparently spent the night calling everyone she could think of, looking for sympathy and temporary housing. Sophie told me about the calls the next morning. She contacted my friend's parents, asking if I was okay, if you were treating me well. She even called my boss at the rec department, claiming she was worried about my emotional state. What did your boss say? That I seemed fine, and that family drama wasn't appropriate workplace conversation. Then she told Mom not to call there again. Elara was burning through her remaining relationships with the efficiency of someone who'd had practice. Each desperate attempt to gain sympathy was actually revealing more of her manipulative nature to people who'd previously trusted her. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Okay. Are you happy? I mean, with everything that's happened, with the divorce, with Mom being gone, are you actually happy? I thought about the question while I made breakfast. Was I happy? The situation was certainly painful, disruptive, and emotionally complicated. But underneath all that, yes, I said, I think I am. For the first time in years, I'm living my own life instead of managing someone else's drama. I'm making decisions based on what I want, rather than what will keep peace. I'm building something I can be proud of. Sophie nodded. Good. Because you deserve to be happy, Dad. You deserve better than what she was giving you. The phone rang. Mark Castellano. Hale, I've got great news. Maria Santos was impressed with your proposal for the Schenectady project. She wants to move forward with you as the primary contractor. The Schenectady project would require expanding my crew to 15 people and investing in additional equipment. It was a significant risk, but also a significant opportunity. What's the timeline? Groundbreaking in October, substantial completion by next summer. It's aggressive, but the profit margins are excellent. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table and realized my life had completely transformed in 6 weeks. My marriage was over, but my business was thriving. My family was smaller, but it was healthier. My future was uncertain, but it was entirely my own. For the first time since this whole situation began, I was genuinely excited about what came next. That afternoon, I drove to the Riverside site to check on progress. The first house was taking shape beautifully. Straight walls, square corners, attention to detail that would make the finished product something special. Tommy Kowalski approached with a question about window installation, but first he said, "Boss, I don't know what was going on in your personal life before, but you seem different lately. More focused, more confident. Whatever changes you made, they're working. I looked at the house we were building. Solid foundation, quality materials, skilled craftsmanship, attention to detail. It was exactly the kind of work I'd always wanted to do, the kind of project that would stand the test of time. Thanks, Tommy. I feel different too. That evening, Sophie and I grilled burgers on the back porch and talked about her college plans. She'd been accepted to 3 schools and was leaning toward the state university's business program. I want to understand how things really work, she said. How to build something that lasts. How to make good decisions. How to avoid the mistakes Mom made. What mistakes do you think she made? She never learned to be happy with what she had. She was always looking for something better, something more exciting, something that would make her feel special. But she never realized that the grass isn't greener somewhere else. You have to water your own grass. Sophie was 18 years old and already wiser than her mother had ever been. The thought was both proud and sad. That's very insightful. I had a good teacher, she said, bumping my shoulder with hers. As we cleaned up dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Rhett. I wanted you to know that Elara and I are done. She's not my problem anymore. I showed the message to Sophie, who rolled her eyes. Like anyone cares what he thinks. I deleted the message without responding. Rhett's relationship status wasn't my concern, and his opinion wasn't something I needed to hear. But the message did confirm what I'd suspected. Elara's support network was completely gone. She was finally experiencing the isolation that came with burning every bridge you'd ever built. It was a harsh lesson, but it was her lesson to learn. That night, I sat on my front porch with a beer and my laptop, working on estimates for the Schenectady project. The numbers were substantial, the biggest contracts I'd ever handled, the largest crew I'd ever managed, the most ambitious timeline I'd ever attempted. A year ago, I would have been too cautious to pursue such opportunities. I would have worried about the risks, the potential for failure, the possibility of overextending myself. But a year ago, I was still married to someone who treated my ambitions as inconveniences and my successes as threats to her self-image. Now I was free to succeed or fail based on my own abilities and decisions. It was both liberating and terrifying. Mrs. Crane waved from